Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Natalie and I'm the artist and owner behind NMC Design Studio, which is a small art business based out of Seattle, Washington. This is part 2 of redesigning my website. You might notice we're in a little bit of a different spot today. I didn't really feel like talking while actually doing the things. So I have some clips of me working on the design and I'm just gonna talk through them with y'all. So where we left off finishing up the information architecture, or essentially like how we're going to lay out all of the information on our website. And that was that big diagram that we created that if you want to actually read it at all, you have to zoom in really far. But that's like essentially kind of, I guess you can think of it like the blueprint almost. I don't know if that's exactly a one-to-one because we're also going to create another thing that's kind of like a blueprint. But for now, you can think of it as like a blueprint, but just words of how our website is going to end up being laid out, right? So the next thing that I jumped into was looking at some other examples. We call this in UX and product design competitive analysis. So, and I think I mentioned it a little bit in the last video of, oh, I need to go like check out these websites that other people are using. So competitive analysis is looking at other competitors or other examples and kind of analyzing what they're doing. So often you'll have like a specific question in mind on what exactly they're doing and how they're doing it. And I tend to use this a lot to make sure that my designs are meeting users' expectations. And something, I didn't actually film this because it's like in the implementation part. I've kind of jumped ahead. I got too excited. But an example of this is I was trying to figure out where the like star rating on an individual product page should live. And so what I did is I went and looked at other companies' product pages to see where they placed it. Because generally there's kind of like a standard or like what a user would expect or where they'd expect it to be. So oftentimes in situations like that, I don't really want to like be innovative or like break the mold, right? I just want it's communicating information and I just want it to be where users would expect it to be. But that's not the kind of competitive analysis that I did at the beginning. What I was actually doing is I was looking at homepage layouts from other companies, and I actually used Pinterest to gather some examples. And I was looking to see what information they were putting on their home pages as well as their product pages, and in what order they were doing so. So I was kind of leaving sticky notes around on top of these screenshots and calling out like CTA, which is a call to action, which generally means like a button or something that you like want a user to interact with, right? Or where they're putting information, where they're putting images, what kinds of information they're putting. I was noticing that a lot of the times when there were calls to sign up for a newsletter, they would include in like text-based information what the value was for joining the newsletter. So like trying to convince users to join. And so with doing this, I kind of got a better sense of what I kind of wanted for my homepage and my other page designs as well. So then we ended up moving into wireframes. And again, I've described what wireframes are. I don't remember if I did in the last video, but definitely in my UX design process video, I described wireframes. So wireframes are the other thing that I was like, these could be described as blueprints. And they're a little bit more visual, but it kind of is just like what you think. It's a very toned down isn't the right word. It's a very skeletal structure of what your website is going to look like. So instead of putting in all of the colors and the exact text that you're using, or the exact words that you're using, or the images that you're using, you're putting in boxes and you're putting in placeholder text. And one of the things I do when making my wireframes, so backing up a couple of steps, first off, generally in my design job, I work a lot in Figma. And it's just one of those softwares that's like industry standard UX or product design software. But along with Figma, they also offer FigJam, which is like a whiteboarding canvas. So a lot simpler of tools. It offers like sticky notes and shapes and things like that. So that's what I was using in the previous video. You would use Figma when you're wanting mid or high fidelity designs, or when you're wanting to control a lot of like the details. So the exact spacing, the text size, text color, all that jazz. You would do all of that in a Figma file instead of a FigJam file. But one of the things I do when working on wireframes is I very intentionally stay in FigJam. And this forces me to keep everything really simple, because otherwise I definitely get caught up in the details and I'm like, ooh, but what color should this be? What should we put here? What should this button exactly look like, right? And that's not what you're supposed to be doing at the wireframe step. You're supposed to be figuring out like the general layout, the general flow of the website. It's supposed to be very simple, again, like that skeletal structure, so that you can change things really easily. You don't want to get super caught up in the details, and because at this point, like, you don't necessarily know this is exactly what it's going to look like. So why would you write out what the text is going to be? Because you might end up deleting that entire section later, right? So I started off with a wireframe of the homepage and was using some of the sections that I had determined in the information architecture step, because I went through and added what kinds of content I wanted on the homepage. And if I remember correctly, as I'm sitting here, that included the like slideshow or image-based banner at the top. It included a like personalized for you section of products. It included, I believe, social media links, and I think it also included a what's new product section. And you'll see in the wireframes, I actually ended up adding in a couple of other things. So one of the things I added in was a collections or theme based section. And this was actually inspired by some of those screenshots, competitive analysis screenshots that I had taken. And a lot of them were showing like different product collections almost, and how those related to like a user's goal or want, if that makes any sense. I'm not sure that makes sense even to like my brain. But essentially, the one that I'm specifically thinking about, there was a screenshot of a technology product homepage. So think like a Best Buy or like a Razer type of retail website. And they included these categories on the homepage as like squares or collections, and would be things like mouses, headsets, internet, whatever, and just like different product types, right? But I think the text framing around it was like, what are you looking for? What do you need help with? Things like that. So kind of framing it as user focused. And so I wanted to do that because we had already determined in the main navigation it was going to be based on product type, but we didn't really have anything other than suggested filtering at those product page or like the product search page level of how to find different themes of things. And just so you can be in my brain for a second, product types is things like stickers, stationery, zines, clothing, accessories, etc. Product themes is things like LGBTQIA+, Pacific Northwest, gaming, anime. And so those are two different things, right? We have the theme of the product and we have the product type. And so we already were providing the product type filtering almost at a homepage level, but we weren't providing any product theme filtering at the homepage level. So that's what these category pieces were intended to do. Looking at the other competitive analysis screenshots, I also was noticing that a lot of these had like a what's new section. And I hadn't originally included that because in my user research, folks weren't super interested in what was new. They were more interested in like recommended for you or like popular or related products, things like that. They weren't really interested in the things that were new, so I didn't add that as a category initially. But looking at similar retail websites and seeing how many are highlighting what's new, like it makes sense in my brain, but it wasn't something users were asking for. So I ended up adding it into the wireframes initially as like a bottom level, like product carousel option, similar to the like recommended for you section where you have like, I wouldn't call it a list, it's a carousel. It's like an image carousel. But if you're not in design and like UI design, I don't know if that makes sense, but that is what it's called. It's kind of like a list, but it's like an image gallery almost. It's like a list in an image gallery. Hopefully what you're seeing on the screen does make sense though, but it's something you can like click through and you can see a variety of different products. So I had that as the products for you as well as new products sections, but one was very high on the page right below that initial like image slideshow at the top, and the new products was at the very bottom of the page. Because while I did see value in having it, it wasn't something that users were asking for, so I wasn't going to give it high priority in the page layout. But then I was thinking, well, I could have this what's new products as like a bottom image carousel down there, or I could include it somewhere else. I could include it as one of those product theme collections, include a what's new square on there, so you're not seeing like a preview of what the products are, but you can click and see like essentially then the product search page pre-populated with the new products. Or I could include a slide in the image slideshow up at the top that highlighted new products. And was thinking, if I have either of those options, do I really need a what's new product carousel down at the bottom? And what I ultimately ended up deciding is no, I don't need that. And I think what makes the most sense is including that as a slide up at the top. And then I moved on to the next wireframe screen, which was the like collections or search page view of what that should look like. And it looks like a pretty standard search view, right? But one of the things that I was specifically trying to figure out is what kinds of filters I wanted, because that's something that I'll end up having to build out when I start implementing the website on whatever platform I decide on. And that was one of the things that I kind of wanted to figure out. So one of the big things that is different on this search page or collections page than what might be on most search pages is there's a big image up at the top, right? And this kind of stems from me wanting to have a lot of visuals and the fact that visuals are very important to users. So being able to include a big visual specifically for specific product categories or collections. So like having a specific image for zines and having a specific image for household goods and a specific image for stickers and stationery, and then a different one for clothing and accessories, as those are my big 4 categories that are available as the top navigation. But then as I was working through this, I decided that I kind of wanted to break each of those down and have additional options for each of those like product subcategories. So for example, in stickers and stationery, it would make sense to include individual stickers, sticker sheets, sticker books, journals, notepads, cards, and I'm trying to think of and washi tape. And having each of those as a product subcategory that can both be filtered on and potentially be included in the site navigation. And I wasn't super sure, and I'm still not super sure how I feel about this, just because if I did allow for this, if a user clicks journals, they're gonna get two options, right? Because I only have 2 journals for sale right now. And these subcategories make a lot of sense on retail websites that have a lot more products and have a lot more variety within each of these product subcategories. But for me, it's like washi tape, I have, 6 options, which is still quite a few, but not that many in the grand scheme of things. So still kind of thinking about if I want to include that as like top level navigation. It will be a filter regardless. It's just kind of a question of if I want to include that in the site navigation so a user can immediately go to like notepads or individual stickers versus having to click on stickers and stationery and then filter with the search filter options to individual stickers or notepads. So that's really just like the biggest question currently that page still has, right? But other than that, like looking at the filter options also helped me figure out what product themes I wanted to include and just reminded me of some of the other functionality that I wanted to include. And then I did a bad. So I finished up with those wireframes and was like, okay, well then next in design process, I should start on mid-fidelity designs or high-fidelity designs. But I didn't. I jumped straight to implementation, which will be an entirely separate video, but just some like thoughts on why I did so. One, I'm impatient and no one's forcing me to do things that I don't want to do. It's just me, right? So I'm impatient and I just kind of wanted to get into it. And the other reason is even if I did do a mid or high fidelity design, I am still going to be using a implementation platform that's going to come with restrictions. I'm not developing this website from the ground up. I don't have a developer who's working with me to develop this website from the ground up. So I am going to be working with a lot of technical limitations based on what implementation platform I end up choosing. And spoiler alert, I chose Shopify, which definitely does have more limitations than the platform I was using previously, which was Wix, but has fewer limitations than some other platforms like Square, for example. So I jumped straight into implementation and actually putting my content and playing around with the design on the website builder. And should I have done a mid or high fidelity design in Figma? Maybe, but I could also spin it and argue that that's essentially what I'm doing right now anyways, using Shopify, because I have the components or like sections that I'm actually going to be able to use, and I'm able to play around with those in Shopify itself and kind of experiment and explore what I want things to look like. And just like as two examples, I decided that I didn't want the social media bar that I originally had on my homepage in the wireframes because I couldn't figure out how to get it to do what I was actually thinking of. And reflecting further, because of how far down it is on the page and because I was getting rid of the what's new product carousel, it's right next to the footer that has all of my social media links anyways. So it wasn't really adding anything. But I did end up adding in a section for calling out my Ko-fi, which is my monthly subscription. And I used a component that I don't think I would have thought of during design because I don't see it used very often, but it worked really well for this use case. And that's a layered slideshow. So you have like your first slide, but then behind that you see like the second and third slide kind of peeking out. So you can click on those like little slivers and that will reveal the next slides. Similarly, something that I wouldn't have thought of using before, just because I don't believe it was functionality available in Wix, at least not that I was aware of, but one of those images with different like product highlights. And that's just a default component that you can use in the template that I'm using in Shopify. And I think that would be great at the top of the category pages where originally we had just a static image, but having that same image but with like the specific product callouts, I think will be great. I think that's it for me today. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, consider subscribing. I post videos every Monday about my artwork and what it's like running a small art business. I'd also like to take this time to thank my Ko-fi subscribers. If you're interested in supporting me further, you can subscribe to me on Ko-fi for $1 or $3 a month, and you'll get various rewards like your name in this video, as well as monthly sketchbooks and behind the scenes content, and monthly digital backgrounds for desktop and mobile devices. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye!